Haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Nun Aleph, Amud Aleph, 9 lines from the top, about halfway down the Amud. The Gemara previously on Daf Nun Amud Aleph brought a suggested principle by the Tana Kama. When you have a carbon seaboard, it's Doiche Shabbos and Doiche Tuma. Whereas if it's a carbon Yachid, it's not Doiche Shabbos and not Doiche Tuma. On that, Rabbi Meir says we find examples of a korban yachid that is yes doiche Shabbos and yes doiche Tuma. For example, a korban Pesach. Rabbi Yaakov says we also find the corollary. We find that a korban tzibor sometimes is not doiche Shabbos and not doiche Tuma. And the example, one of the examples he brings is a korban chagiga. The Gemara now says, Omar le Rav Huna bereid Rav Yoshua le Raveh, V'tano ma'ishno Pesach dekori le korban yachid, u'ma'ishno chagiga dekori lo korban tzibor. Wants to understand why is it that when it comes to the korban Pesach, it's referred to as a korban yachid. When it comes to a korban chagiga, it's referred to as a korban tzibor. If you're going to say that the reason why the chagiga is called a korban tzibur is because it's brought bekenufia together with everybody when they come on the sholish regalim, then Pesach nami asli bekenufia. The korban Pesach, granted, it's brought by the individual just as the korban chagiga is, but it's also brought at a time when there's an assembly during the sholish regalim. Ika Pesach Sheni Deloy Asa B'Knufya. The Gemara answers because Pesach Sheni is included in the category of Pesach, and Pesach Sheni is not brought as part of the regular on Yudalid B'Nisan, but rather it's Yudalid 1 month later, Yudalid B'Iyar, by the individual. Omar le Im Kain Yehei Doiches HaShabbos V'Satuma. If so, then Pesach Sheni should be Doiches Shabbos and also Doiches Tuma. Omar le, he answers back, indeed it is so. Pesach Sheni is doiche Shabbos and doiche Tuma. Kimanda Omar dochi, like that opinion. The Tanya, it's a machlokes in the following brisa. Pesach Sheni doiche Shabbos ve'eno doiche Tuma. The Tana Kama says Pesach Sheni is doiche Shabbos but not Tuma. Rabbi Yehuda oimer af doiche Tuma. Rabbi Yehuda says it is doiche Shabbos as well as Tuma. My taima, the Tana Kama, why should the Tana Kama hold that it's not doiche Tuma? Omar loch, the Tana Kama will say to you, mipnei Tuma dechisoi veyeose betuma. In other words, the whole reason why he's not bringing a korban Pesach on Pesach Rishon Yudalid ben Nisan is because he was tamei. So therefore, he's nidche to bring it 1 month later on Yudalid be'iyar Pesach Sheni. So Tana Kama argues, if he wasn't able to bring a korban Pesach Rishon because he was in a state of Tuma, that he can't bring it also then on 1 month later if it's in the state of Tuma. The whole reason for the Dechiyah was because of Tuma. Rabbi Yehuda Omar Lach, Rabbi Yehuda would respond and say, no. Omar Kro, it says in the Pasuk, Kekol chukas ha-Pesach ya'asu oisoi. All of the decrees of the korban Pesach Rishon on Yudal ben Nisan, it should also be performed on Pesach Sheni. Therefore includes afilu betuma, even a state of Tuma. Granted, when it comes to Pesach Rishon, it's the majority of Klal Yisrael who's in a state of Tuma that will still bring it in that state of Tuma on Yudal ben Nisan. And only the individual is then going to be pushed off to being brought 1 month later. But indeed, if the individual who was pushed off because of a state of Tuma to Pesach Sheni is also in a state of Tuma, so then he will also bring it in that state, because otherwise he'll forfeit the whole inyan of korban Pesach. So just as, again, when it comes to the Tzibur, we don't push them off. They perform the korban Pesach on Yudal ben Nisan in the state of Tuma. So to the individual, we'll also sell it. We'll also then bring the korban Pesach Sheni in a state of Tuma. The Torah says that really lechatchila in your state of Tuma on Yudal ben Nisan, therefore you'll bring your korban Pesach Sheni in a state of Tahara. That's lichatchila. But loy zachav, he's not able to then be bringing it in a state of tahara because he's tamei. Then yasene betuma, then he shall bring it in a state of tuma. That's how Rabbi Yehuda explains. On Daf Nun Aleph Amud Beis. The Gemara now goes back to Rabbi Elazar's question, which was brought on Nun Amud Beis. His question was the one, namely Rabbi Meir, who says that a Korban Pesach is a Korban Yachid. Can that affect a Tmura or not? The Gemara explained the Shaila of Rabbi Elazar as being, we know that the Korban, I say Korban Pesach, I meant to say the Par Yom Kippurim. The Par Yom Kippurim of the Korban of the Kohen Gadol, which is bought by his own funds. So he is the Bailim, the Chara of that Korban Par Yom Kippurim. So when he then goes ahead and affects and tries to make a Tmura, so does it go after him as the one who's Makdish, or does it go after the Miskaprim? And since the fellow Kehanim are also getting a kapara, they're shutfim in the par. And shutfim cannot affect a tmura. So the shaila is, do we say that the Kohanim are established shutfim and therefore does not affect a tmura? Or do we say that their getting a kapara is really only agav to his kapara? The Kohen Gadol's kapara, whereby it's the individual. Since the individual's is the Kohen Gadol, therefore he can affect a tmura. The Gemara now asks, "Betepuk li de asher loy omar rachmana." The Gemara says, let us derive from the fact that it says that it's asher loy. The Torah says that it belongs to the Kohen Gadol, namely it has to be from his own personal funds. Mishelohu mevi, from his own money does he bring the carbon par shel Yom Kippurim, and therefore that would indicate that it's a personal carbon whereby it could affect the Tmura. And therefore, even though it's true the Kohanim, his fellow Kohanim, do get a kapara, but it's only agav the Kohen Gadol, whereby the Kohen Gadol can affect a Tmura. The Tanya, it says in the Brisa, Asher Loi, in regards to the par, Shema Kippurim, it says that it's belonging to him, it's from him. Misheloihu mevi, v'lo mishel tzibur, from his own funds, his own personal funds, the funds of the Kohen Gadol, and not the funds of the Korban Tzibur must be purchased. Yochol, I might think, lo yavi mishel tzibur, shein hatzibur miskaprim boy, aval yavi mishel echav hakoyanim, sharei echav hakoyanim miskaprim boy. Granted, it can't be bought by the funds of the tzibur, because they don't get a kapara. But since his fellow Kohanim do get a kapara, he could go ahead and use the funds of his fellow Kohanim to buy the par. Therefore, it says in the second time, Asher Loi, it belongs to the funds of the Kohen Gadol himself. Yochalam, I think, Lo Yavi, he shall not bring. The Imhevi Kosher, he should not bring if it's being bought by the funds of the Tzibur or the Kohanim. But, B'di'evet, if he did use their funds to buy the par, then he could go ahead and it's kosher, it's valid. Tamulor Marshuv, it says a third time, Asher Loi, teaching me that it has to be bought by the funds of the Kohen Gadol. Shona Kosev, Alov La'akiv. The Pasuk repeats it to say that Li'ikuva, it must be brought by the Kohen Gadol's funds, and if it's not, then it's possible, it's not valid. The Gemara says, if you want to bring a proof from here that Rebbe Elazar's Shaila, whether it can affect a Tmura from this par or not, from here, the Chor, you want to suggest that he could, because after all, it has to be bought by the funds of the Kohen Gadol, indicating that his dafke his, and therefore the kapara that the fellow Kohanim get are only agav him. Says the Gemara, Taimech, according to your rationale, echav hakoyanim, ilav dekonu begave hechim bekaperle. If the Kohanim, the fellow Kohanim, do not have some sort of acquisition in this par, then how can they be getting a kapara? Elamai must be they do have an acquisition. If they have an acquisition, then the question comes back, and it's not so clear. Can we affect a tmur with this par or not? Same question as we said before, Rabbi Elazar was asking. Elo shayni begaza the Aaron the afkare rachmana gabi echav hakayanim. Rather, we must say that the begaza, the treasury, the funds of the kohen gadol of Aaron, have a state of hefkerus. In other words, they're hefker to a certain extent. The Torah made it hefker gabe his fellow kohanim, whereby they have a certain acquisition in these funds that is used to buy the par. Hachanami tmuro nami shiny begaza the Aaron the afker rachmana gabe echav kohanim. Similarly, we would say in regards to the question of the tmura, that these funds, since they are hefker by the Torah, and thereby give an acquisition to the fellow Kehanim, whereby then this is considered to be a partnership. If it's a partnership, then it cannot affect the Tmura. So therefore we're left with the same question that Rabbi Elazar had asked originally. Can the par Sheyom Kippurim affect a Tmura or not? And therefore we couldn't use this pasuk to prove one way or the other.